Hello, everybody. This is a Black History Month special. Pauline Taylor was born into a world of violence of slavery, violence of the Alabama coal fields. It was everywhere, kind of like Gaza. Find it at church, in siblings' prayers, at bedtime. You could hear it in the stories whispered round the breakfast table. In fact, first time Pauline heard it as a young girl was over a plate of grits, eggs, and cheese with fried corn cake and a side of watermelon rind preserves. Her mama was standing by the sink with a dish rag in her hand when she told her about the time that her grandmother, a Native American woman by the name of Jane Dobbs, was beaten to death at 35. Beaten to death with a belt soaked in water with holes drilled in it. Her crime? Saying no, refusing to tote water. Terrible tale for a young girl's ears, but this was the atmosphere that Pauline was raised in. You know, an atmosphere that breathed violence. Yes, it breathed violence. So much so that Pauline could smell it on her daddy's black lung breath when he picked her up to hold her after a long day in the mines. It smelled like sweat and kerosene and love and hard work, but hardly no pay, you know? And maybe that's why it smelled like gunpowder the day that the company tried to break the miners' strike in Patton Junction in Alabama in 1920. I came across, just by chance, a story about it the other day online, much to my surprise. It says that 3 people were killed in that battle, the company owner, 2 deputy sheriffs, and that the governor of the state sent in 550 troops to break the miners' strike. What it doesn't say, according to Pauline's telling, is that the poor whites in the adjoining county cut the railroad tracks so the troops couldn't get in, and the miners were able to escape into the hills. They lost everything that day, you know, their jobs, their farms, their livelihood, everything but their dignity. But you couldn't take that from them, could you? I mean, after all, these were the children of Jane Dobbs. They sang, how'd that song go? Before I be a slave, I be buried in my grave and go home to my Lord and be free. And so, armed with nothing more than their dignity and their shirts on their backs, they picked up and moved the family to Oklahoma, where they got a farm and built a house, tried to build a new life. And don't you know, the house got blown down by a tornado. So they built another house, and it got blown down by a tornado. I'm not making this up. And so they picked up and moved to a place called Wolf Pit, Kentucky. Wolf Pit, Kentucky. Well, they bought still another farm, but I guess the Lord, or maybe it was the devil, wasn't finished with them yet because when they went to gather their crops and pick their apples during the fall harvest, the Klan started shooting at them from the hills. So they joined the Great Migration north to places like Cleveland and Gary and Detroit to work in the auto factories and the mills. And this was around the time that John L. Lewis hired 50 communist organizers to help organize the CIO. And Pauline had moved to Ohio, to the Youngstown, Warren, Camel, Niles area, and that's where she met Gus Hall, who was one of those 50 organizers. And Gus was uh, uh, building the Steelworkers Organizing Committee in order to found the Steelworkers Union. And she was married to a steelworker, and uh, and her daddy was a union man, so she joined the effort. Made sense, right? Because, like I said, daddy was a union man, and she never met a strike that she didn't like. But once again, Pauline came face to face with company initiated violence. It was on June 19, 1937. The SWOC organized a Women's Day. 50 women joined the picket lines in front of Republic Steel. And they marched up and down, up and down, up and down, chanting, singing, you know, fighting for the Union. And some of them got tired, and there were some boxers sitting in front of the gate. So they sat down, and the sheriffs, the deputies objected and said, "Who said you can sit there? Who said you can take a left? Stand up, get up off them boxes." And when they didn't get up quick enough, they started shooting in the air. Boom! Boom, 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 boom! 50 people were injured. 2 lay dead. Strike was broken. But Pauline and the SWOC, they were made of sterner stuff. They maintained their presence on the lines, brought in the National Guard. That strike was lost. They eventually won the Union, but at tremendous cost. But at this point, Pauline had had her fill of violence. I mean, you can imagine. And to top it off, her son was a boxer, fought uh, welter and middleweight fights, then picked up and asked to fight in World War II, where he was sent to the South Pacific, came back, sent to Korea, uh, and Pauline had her fill, and she joined the worldwide effort after the bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki to ban atomic weapons, and signed the uh, Stockholm Peace Appeal. And she traveled up and down the country protesting the war in the Korea. And she wrote a pamphlet in which she said that my son is being asked to fight for a democracy in Korea that he never knew at home, you know? And she was, this effort had big support in the Black community, you know? Um, People like Coleman Young in Detroit and Harold Washington in Chicago. And when they did that, the ruling class went berserk. I mean, they weren't having it, and they cracked down with an iron fist. They arrested Du Bois at 83 for refusing to register as an agent of a foreign principal. You know, they called Pauline before the House Un-American Activities for 2 times, and they fired thousands from their jobs, um, um, and the Cold War, McCarthyism settled over the land. Deep freeze took people's passports. It was a terrible time. But Pauline, like her brothers and sisters and comrades, did not give up the fight. She remained a sojourner for peace and justice, and she stood uh, against the Vietnam War. She stood against the U.S. invasions of Santo Domingo, Grenada. She stood for the freedom of Mandela and against apartheid in South Africa. And she maintained that presence uh, until her dying day, an active member of the U.S. Peace Council. Brothers and sisters, siblings, today we are uh, confronted with similar problems that Pauline and her contemporaries faced, and we are so inspired by her example. That example of courage and tenacity and fight back that embodied her entire life, and it's a good thing because we face the challenge today of another war, a genocidal imperialist war against the Palestinian people. And once again today, we can be very proud that the African American people in big numbers are opposing that war. Why in November, 1,000 black ministers signed an open letter to Biden saying, "Not in our name. You must have a ceasefire in Gaza." And that effort, which was sparked by Palestinian and African American and other youth of color, has spread all across the country. And just recently, the AFL-CIO came out in one of the few times in their history and took direct issue with U.S. imperialist foreign policy. They too said, "No, not in our name. We must stand with our brother and sister sibling workers in Palestine and Israel, demanding a ceasefire." And that's important because today we have to keep our eyes on the prize, because we got two challenges. We got to defeat this foreign policy on the one hand, but we also got to remember that there's another big battle in November. And for some, it's hard to see the significance of that November battle for the smoke caused by the terror and fire and bombs in Gaza. And we have taken the position, y'all, that the fight to defeat fascism, MAGA fascism, Trump fascism in November lies in the battle to defeat Biden's policy in Gaza today. You got to clear away that smoke. You got to clear away that terror. You got to clear away that genocide and even then it's going to be very, very tough. But that's what's before us. But we remember the words of the great Nelson Mandela, who said, "It all seems impossible until it's done." And we remember the lessons taught by people like Pauline and Edie and others who found a way where there was no way, you know, who found a way to make the light shine. And maybe, just maybe, she learned that from her daddy, you know, who held up that kerosene lamp in the mines, who took it out of the mine, you know, to the Battle of Patton Junction, took it from the Battle of Patton Junction and the troops that were sent against them to the fields of Oklahoma, and survived the tornadoes, and then went to Kentucky and survived the Klan, and then joined the great labor battles in the Midwest and the fight to found the industrial unions. And that's our history. That's labor history. It's our Black history, and we uphold it and we learn from it. And so we say in closing, let that light shine. Let it shine, let it shine. Let that light for our past, our chosen past, shine. Thank you very much for listening.